Now, going over to who Oklahoma is targeting in the transfer portal. We talked about some guys. We brought up some guys' names that we're looking at in the transfer portal, and there's been a little bit more movement in the transfer portal front for guys that OU is looking at and trying to bring in, and offers being made. And it looks pretty certain that Oklahoma could be the front runner for Washington State cornerback. That's DB Ethan O'Connor. That's a dude that his name's kind of been thrown out there. It seems like he's probably going to lean Oklahoma. He's a guy that just entered the transfer portal very recently, and I know we have some Washington State ties with Ben Arbuckle, even though he's on the offensive side of the ball. He's a dude, so that's one guy that we could be looking at. And Oklahoma is also they're leaning really heavy. They're kind of the favorites right now on the number one offensive lineman in the portal, which we just actually talked about a couple of other offensive linemen that are in the portal that we're also pushing really hard to get. There's one that we are very certain that we might be able to get, and he is the current number one offensive lineman in the portal, and that is Ethan Onianwa. So he's from Rice. So again, not that big time school. He's not coming from Ohio State. He's not coming from Michigan, anything like that. And I understand where people are coming from with that, but this is a big time get. This is a guy that teams all over the nation are trying to get him. Blue Bloods are trying to get this guy. Number one offensive lineman in the portal, and he could be a really big piece to build around. Kind of that block at the bottom. Whenever you start off with a base with Legos. Not really sure what that piece is called, but he could kind of be that you build upon him around that offensive line. Then of course that offensive line kind of gives you a lot of extra things. It can help your quarterback out, as we know as Oklahoma fans. So just recognize that we are going after some big time names that don't really seem like big time names because they're coming from Rice. They're coming from Miami of Ohio. That's okay. We've even got some guys from Toledo or some guys from other smaller schools that just recognize not all big names come from big time schools. Sometimes those big names are big names only because the insiders know that they're big names. I'm not saying that I think 100% that I'm projecting that these guys are going to be there. I'm just saying there's other schools that are highly regarded. They're also looking at guys like Ethan Onianwa. So just keep his name in mind. That seems like an offensive lineman that we might be able to get in who can actually be some help, where, not like a Spencer Brown who didn't really end up helping out a whole lot this past season. Not trying to throw shade at Spencer Brown. He's actually improved a lot this season, so not trying to throw shade at him at all. But beginning of the season, I know we all kind of had our frustrations with him, just kind of throwing his name out there. Some tight ends, of course, losing Bauer Sharp and understanding that Ben Arbuckle loves to use his tight ends. We want to get some big-time tight ends. And I'm talking big-time as in big-frame, SEC-built tight ends. First, we've got Tanner Koziol from Ball State, 6'7", 237 pounds from Bloomingdale, Illinois. This is a Ball State tight end that, like I said, don't worry. Don't worry about going after some tight ends. Don't worry about not having a big frame tight end that won't be able to block like we might have seen in the past. This dude is huge, and he has an SEC frame for a tight end, and he's got the stats to show for it too. He's got 839 yards and 8 touchdowns, just under 9 yards average per reception. This guy. These are really great numbers for a tight end, and he led Ball State in receiving this past season. This is a dude that, again, a dude that big-time schools are looking at him. He's got some other schools that are really trying to pull him in. Oklahoma's trying really hard for him. This is like their biggest go and get in terms of tight end. And another one that they're trying to go after is Jamari Johnson from Louisville. This is a guy 6'5", 265 pounds. He's born in Inglewood, California, so one of those California boys who we know that good recruits come out of there. And again, don't worry about that small tight end ever again if we're going after guys like this in the portal, because these types of dudes are big. Now, The only thing with Jamari Johnson, he's only got 13 receptions this past season, 158 yards, 1 touchdown, 12.2 yards average. So he only played in 7 games, and really the most he got in any of those games was 2 receptions. So it's not like we have a whole lot of tape to look back on with him. I'm just kind of trusting the judgment of all of these big name schools. They're going after him. But with Tanner Koziol, not even sure if I'm saying his name right, but I will figure it out by the time he's wearing that crimson and cream, if that's what it comes to. But with him, with Tanner, I think that I see it. I see it with him. You can look at the stats, you can look at the tape, you can look at the body frame, and you know it. With a guy like Jamari Johnson, you can look at the body frame, 6'5", 265 pounds, and know that seems like a dude that we want at tight end, at least as a blocker. 6'5", 265 pounds, I will take that. And especially if you're athletic, like these guys are, that's pretty big. Another guy that we're looking at for a tight end, he visits next Tuesday, is Luke McGarry. He's a guy that, it seems to be more of a backup plan rather than the guy. He doesn't really have big-time stats or anything. He's from Tulsa, and so, he doesn't have big-time stats. That it's a guy that I'm not too crazy about bringing in Luke McGarry personally. I don't know enough about him to really feel confident in saying that I'm excited to get him. But another guy that we are definitely looking at, and it seems like more of the backup plan, that hey, it seems pretty certain that we could get this guy in if we needed to fill that spot at tight end. But the big concern isn't really with the tight ends or the offensive line per se. I think the offensive line is a concern, but I think we know that we've got some good things coming in the offensive line. The biggest concern right now is the wide receiver room, and that is something that we are going to need to go after in the portal, with 6 guys from our wide receiver room out and leaving. We're going to need to go and attack that pretty hard. We mentioned Donovan McCulley and Reggie Virgil. Hopes are still high with them. Their names are still in there for Oklahoma, but their names are also starting to gain traction in the portal, where other big-time teams are seeing these guys. So McCulley and Virgil both on the top of our list currently, and we would love to get them in, because I think they could add some talent that we really need to this offense. But they're not necessarily these are guys that might be able to be picked up by someone else, So I still think we've got a pretty good chance at either one of them, but those are still guys that we're looking at. Anyways, going on to a new name that's been entered into the portal, if I can get my words to come out properly, is Neziah Hunter. This is a guy that his name is a big-time name from Cal, a big-time receiver, and it's very evident to anyone how good this guy is. Cal has been a pretty solid team all season long. Not a great team, but a pretty solid team. They're in the ACC, so he's gone against some competition. And that dude is a freak of nature. He's one of those wide receivers that you really want to get. He does visit next week, but we can't get too excited about him. Nebraska and Texas Tech are both trying pretty hard to bring him in, and they've both made it very clear that they're willing to spend money in the portal. So that's something that has to be looked at. Now, Oklahoma, as far as the tight ends that we mentioned, Oklahoma is mentioning some very big numbers in dropping to get some tight ends in the door. When it comes to wide receivers, I assume that they're trying to drop big numbers for the wide receivers too, to make sure that they can get big-time names, especially if we were able to get Neziah Hunter. That would be huge for us. That would be really huge. He does visit next week, so hopefully that visit pulls him a little bit. But we have to remember, I feel like Nebraska is just one of those teams that they always seem to be taking key players away from us in recruiting and in the portal. Just kind of throwing that out there. They just recently took a guy from the portal from us, here in the last 24 hours, 48 hours. So, they are that team that I feel like maybe they just watch Oklahoma's board and they're like, hey, let's go after that guy. They took Malachi Coleman from us. He was a wide receiver who now is transferring away from them. So who knows? Maybe that's a guy that we'd go after. Not really sure. But yeah, Nebraska, don't sleep on Nebraska. I know they haven't been a powerhouse for quite some time, but they're one of those teams that they still recruit really well. They have 2 5-star recruits in one class now after getting the defensive lineman from Missouri. But going on with Brennan Thompson leaving, it's kind of stirred up a little more concern. And nobody wanted Thompson to leave, but it seems that OU staff believes that with him leaving, his production can be replaceable. 230 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's not like that's a dude that we just can't replace. And it feels like he probably should have had more production than he did this past season, especially with the opportunities that were given to him. He wasn't able to capitalize on it, and it's not all his fault. It really isn't. I feel like, honestly, it's probably more not his fault than anything. But, he's one of those guys that, Oklahoma is probably looking at, and it seems like even in the staff that they feel like they can do without. So maybe not necessarily pushing him out the door, but just letting him know, if you are thinking about leaving, right now is probably the best time for you to try to leave. We just want you to do what's best for you, kind of situations, trying to part ties, mutually part ties, and so I think that's kind of what they're doing, parting ways, and doing it peacefully. That kind of seems like the word that I'm seeing, that I'm reading from this situation with Brennan Thompson. We still do retain Jaden Gibson at the moment, and Deion Burks. Although it seems that Deion Burks could leave any moment, and I know Oklahoma fans are sitting here just kind of chomping at the bit, really hoping that we don't see that name pop up in the portal, because he's a guy that we want back, especially with the fast start that he had last season. It feels like when he was in, he was productive every time. And so we do want Deion Burks back really bad. It seems that there could be momentum to bring him back for the 2025 season, but don't get too attached. I'm nervous that we are going to see his name in there because there's been a lot of speculation. I think even Deion Burks is kind of fighting with it. He wants to stay, but he also knows that there might be an opportunity to leave and go do something to further his future. And on top of that, all of his teammates are leaving. So we can understand where Deion Burks is coming from, especially at this point, holding out this long. He's one of those guys. But Jaden Gibson, that's a guy that we really hope to keep around. He's a guy that would really shock me if we do lose Jaden Gibson. Jaden Gibson seems like he's really the guy to stay, and he seems like he would be the veteran that we would have on the team going into next season if we were able to keep him around. So that's kind of all we know on the transfer portal front as of this moment. Hey Sooner fans, did you enjoy this video? Well, go ahead and hit that like button and go ahead and hit that subscribe button. What are you doing if you've made it this far and haven't already? You should be able to find that subscribe button over here. And then if you want to see full episodes, we've got those up here and clips right down here. So go check that out. But we thank you all so much for all the love, all the support. We'll catch you next time. Boomer.